Hello, guys. Listen, I'm going to do this report tonight. I'm just going to talk about this real quick. Italy is in big trouble. The banking system was in huge problems, and those problems haven't went away. The Italian government has a tremendous amount of debt. It's unbelievable. It dwarfs Greece. It's so big it can't be handled, and the Italian banking system can't be handled either. It's just like Deutsche Bank. It's going down. Deutsche Bank's going down too. This is going to be an incredible situation, something you've never witnessed in your lifetimes. It's going to be right back, something similar to the Great Depression. It's coming fast. But here's the thing. I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch, and I don't think it's Italy that's going to go first. But Italy by itself can tear the European Union to pieces, bring down the entire Eurozone experiment there that they had going, where they had bring down the entire currency of the euro. It is an enormous wrecking ball. But here's the point I want to make. They're going to wrangle over these things, but they're going to be at an impasse ultimately. Because the Italian people are behind the Italian government. The Italian government is promising this for the people. The people are on the side of the Italian government. They're not on the side of the European Union and the boys in Brussels. And so let's open the charts right here and take a look at this article. It says Italian banks are reeling. A budget fight with Europe won't help. And guess what? They're in a budget fight with Europe. But here's what's going on. It says Italy is battling the European Union over government spending levels. They're at an impasse. This situation is going to bounce back and forth. The Italian government then is, because this budget was not passed, they're going to have to come up with a revised budget plan. And then they're going to have to submit that new revised budget plan to the boys in Brussels. The boys in Brussels, and each time they do this kind of thing, it'll take them like a month or 2 months will go by. While everybody in the world is holding their breath to see what's going to happen, the Italians will be creating new budget proposals and submitting them to the European Union, and that takes like 3 weeks for a new budget proposal, and then the European Union has to go over it and study this new budget proposal, and then they have to send it back to Greece, and then Greece decides on these points or that points. And what happens is this situation right here, explosive as it is, and it has the potential to bring down the entire European Union, it's going to be dragged out over months. Meanwhile, we got Deutsche Bank that could go under in a whoosh, a Lehman moment, a landslide, while these guys are wrangling over what's going to happen. But here's what I got to say about this Italian thing. Ultimately, this is going nowhere except over a cliff, the Italian thing. The Italian banks are broke. As the pressure comes on the Italian bonds, this is going to start to reflect into the banking sector. Let's just read a little bit more here. It says the European Commission rebuked the Italian government on Tuesday over a draft budget that calls for sharp spending increases in violation of EU rules. Italy will have to back down or face fines. So see, that's what they're going to do. They're going to wrangle. They're going to send Italy back to the drawing board to create a new budget proposal. And they'll try to force Italy to back down or face fines. Well, Italy's not going to back down that much. What they will do is they will create a new budget proposal and submit it. Then that all takes time, see? And this is what's going on. It's going to go back and forth. It says Italian banks own huge amounts of the government's $2.6 trillion worth of debt. $2.6 trillion worth of debt. Italian banks own huge amounts of that, the government's debt. Now, if you just can't take $2.6 trillion worth of debt off the board, boys. Italy, that $2.6 trillion is what's keeping the entire European banking system afloat. It says an extended budget battle between the country's government and the European Union could cause bond prices to dip further, eroding the financial positions of banks. Italy banks. Italy banks are shot right now. They had to borrow $20 billion from the Italian government not long ago, and they've been going through that money, and that's 20 billion euros, which is more than 20 billion Americans, about 22 or 23 billion American. They've been going through that money like a hot knife slides through butter. The Italian banks. This Italian thing's not going away. This is going to be a mess. It's going to, if nothing else, if Deutsche Bank by some miracle holds up, if the Chinese real estate market by some miracle doesn't crash, if our real estate market doesn't crash, if our stock market doesn't crash, if everything by some miracle is able to hold together for a few more months while they wrangle with the Italians, ultimately this is going to end up to be another Greece. But it's not Greece. It's 10 times bigger than Greece. But it's just as screwed up as Greece was in trying to fix Greece. But you can't fix Italy. Italy's too big to fix. What's going to happen is, ultimately, when they get done wrangling a few months from now, this situation right here is going to bring down the Eurozone experiment and bring down the European currency. It's going to bring Europe to its knees. If nothing else starts, if we can somehow get through everything else, we're not going to get past this one. We're not going to get past Italy. It's been brewing for a long time. Let's just read a little bit more. It says the banks have been struggling for years, with high costs, low returns, and over 200 billion euros worth of bad loans. Fitch analysts said that the sector has gotten better at dealing with the bad debt. It's just like what he said, the Fitch analyst just now. He basically said that they got better at sweeping it all under the carpet. But it's still there. It says, the sector has gotten better at dealing with bad debt, but they are warned that progress could stall if investors are scared off by the government's economic plans. Now, I'm going to tell you what. Has anybody honestly seen the prices of the Italian bonds? The yields are not much different than the U.S. Treasury. Of course, they're no good either. But I'd take the U.S. Treasury over an Italian bond. I mean, an Italian bond to me is just like junk. It's junk. Let's just face it. It's junk. The rating agencies that lowered the rating on Italian almost down to junk level a couple days ago. It is junk. They're doing them a favor by saying it's not junk. It's garbage. The Italian bonds are garbage. And they're going for what? Under 4% for 10 years. Who on earth would buy Italian debt? It's Greece all over again. Who on earth would buy Italian debt and only get a 4% yield over 10 years? Or less than 4% yield over 10 years. They'd have to be entirely insane to buy that garbage. They go on to say, I mean, they're trying to, it says they warn that progress could stall if investors are scared off by the government's economic plans. We can get into a situation where things slowly get better. That's awful optimistic, I'm telling you. I can't even. They're hoping for it to get better. That's like a guy with gangrene hobbling on one leg and his leg's all black with gangrene. He's saying, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. You know, that's like Monty Python's The Black Knight after the guy chops all his arms and legs off. And he's saying, I'll get better. I'll grow new legs. Honest to God, this is just sick. It says investors are also worried about the risk of contagion because roughly 1/5 of Italy's government bonds is held in other Eurozone countries. This thing is like a huge bonfire and it's soaked in gasoline and all it needs is a match. But what I say is they are going to take a long time. This thing's going to be in limbo for a little while before it explodes. But ultimately, this thing is heading toward the wire. They're going to toss it back and forth like a hot potato. Italy will make a few concessions and stuff, and then the European Union will look over their concessions and they'll say this isn't good enough, and then they'll send it back, and then they'll make a few more proposals, and then they'll say this is the way government works. It takes ages. It'll take like each step will take like 3 weeks between each step. And they're going to make about 10 of these steps before they finally come to the conclusion that they cannot possibly see eye to eye. And that the banks are starting to, and the bonds will be in worse shape then than they are now. And the whole thing's going to start a slippery slide to hell. That's what's coming with this Italy thing. And I'm going to tell you, this is a real mess, and nobody's getting out of this one. This one's bringing the system down. If nothing else can bring it down before this, the wrangling's probably, well, let's see, it takes them about 3 weeks to send it back and forth, and they're probably going to do that a half a dozen times. So, you can kind of figure in your head it's probably going to be like 6 months or something before this really comes to a final head and explodes. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye-bye, guys.